Hello and welcome to this new episode of Bootstrapping Your Dreams here. I'm your host Manoj Agarwal. I'm today very excited to have Pat Flynn and his partner Matt Garland on the show. So Pat, those of you who don't know Pat, he's the founder of Smart Passive Income, as well as a best-selling author, serial entrepreneur, industry influencer, and a startup advisor. Pat has founded several ventures like SPI Media, the Smart Passive Income podcast, Switchpod, the Fusebox FM, to name a few. Pat started the Smart Passive Income blog with the intention to help online entrepreneurs get started and stay on the right path. And he uses his experience to help others answer the questions he once faced and shares the tools and techniques that have worked for him. So Pat saw the power of passive income when he taught a test prep course for architects in training, and his course brought him over $200,000 in revenue over the next year. Instead of developing more courses, though, Pat started training others on how to do the same. Pat also started the Smart Passive Income podcast in 2010 as a tool for learning business strategies and tactics, and it is now one of the top business podcasts, which was featured in the New York Times and has more than 60 million downloads. Pat and Matt are partners behind Smart Passive Income. Smart Passive Income is a media company elevating entrepreneurs to within the reach of their dreams. Matt is a co-founder and CEO of Smart Passive Income, Fusebox, and advises several tech startups. Matt is an expert when it comes to operations, finance, pricing, product development, customer experience, as well as empowering marketing and sales. They believe in empowering other leaders, teams, organizations to achieve their potential through sustainable growth. Welcome, Matt and Pat.
Thank you.
Awesome to be here.
Thank you for that
Awesome.
intro.
Great. Yeah, of course. To be honest, I came across you about 4 years ago when I was starting my entrepreneurial journey and sort of trying to figure out this game. And I learned about your journey, Pat. You know how you started and what was the circumstances in which you launched your course. Now, I would love for you to share that story and how you got started, so that we can get to know your journey a little bit before we dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. This takes us back to 2008. I was actually on track to become an architect, and I was taking several different exams. But of course, 2008 also comes with what we now know as the Great Recession, and I was let go from my architecture job, even though I'd done everything I was supposed to and was even doing more beyond my job description. I still got let go, and that was very difficult. I didn't know what my other options were because that's what I had dedicated my life to, and I still got let go. And fortunately, I actually discovered a podcast at the time where I heard an interview where a person was teaching people how to pass the project management exam online, and they said they were making six figures a year doing so. And the way they were describing it, they talked about having a website and having resources and helping people. And I was like, wow, I remember when I took this very difficult exam called the lead exam leading up to my architecture stuff. It was very difficult, but there was nobody teaching it. And so I said, well, maybe I can be the person to step up to teach that. And that's exactly what I did. So I created a website called greenexamacademy.com. And that website started to make a name for itself in the architecture and design space, so much so that, like you said, it had made over $200,000 in a year. And I had done that through both advertising on the website, but mainly through selling a study guide that I had created. And right after that happened, a lot of people were asking me, how did you do that? Like, you didn't go to business school. And I said, no, I didn't. And I said, I made a ton of mistakes. I honestly am just trying to figure it out as I go. Maybe I should create a blog to just share this journey with everybody. So this is where Smart Passive Income came into play in very late 2008. And it was just me blogging about my adventures in entrepreneurship, all the things that I had done and that I was completing that was working, and all the stuff that I was doing that wasn't working. I just always wanted to be honest and upfront. And I think also a part of what put me on the map back then was I was sharing every single dollar and cent that I was making and where it was coming from, what I was spending, what I was making. And that really attracted a lot of people to me, because a lot of people who were teaching entrepreneurship at the time were very much hiding everything and very much just talking about the good parts of it, and were almost seen as snake oil salesmen at the time. I wasn't even selling anything at the time. It wasn't until after Matt and I partnered and after a lot of requests from our audience that we started to build our own products at Smart Passive Income, like courses on how to do podcasting, affiliate marketing, email marketing, webinars, all that kind of stuff. And so that's really where it started. Matt came into play after the business really started to grow. And I, as an entrepreneur, was starting to feel stretched thin. because this is very common. When you start to grow, you start to say yes to a lot more opportunities that weren't there before, and you start to put your energy into way too many things. And so I either had to cut back on things and scale back the growth, or hire and find the right people to help me. And I started working with Matt first when he had an agency that I hired, and then I brought him in and the team on to help SPI solely. And that was huge because that helped us with an even bigger trajectory into helping and scaling more people and better quality material. And, the team is in and of itself a wealth of knowledge. And now it's not just me, it's the team and Matt and everybody else who can contribute as well. So this media company that's now here has helped serve millions of people, and thousands of people have become students of our courses, and we've become known for some top quality material in this space. And it's great because now that, the pandemic happened, a lot of people are also now exploring their own journeys and how to take maybe a job loss or a pay cut and turn their knowledge and something into a business venture. And we're just grateful that we have a lot of resources to be able to help people with that.
Absolutely, absolutely. What a inspiring story. And yeah, I mean, I think, as you said, a lot of people don't get started thinking that this is not even possible for them, thinking that a lot of people who are talking about this are snake oil salespeople. But when you really look into it, like, the economy is changing, everybody's expectation is changing, and people who have gone down this path before, that information is so valuable. A lot of people want it. And uh, thanks to you and other pioneers like you, who tapped into that, and you sort of showed the way to others. So question to you, Matt, like, I see that you work with a lot of startups, and one of my background is technology startups myself. One of the things that I find a lot of founders these days, they come up with their own sort of obstacles in front of them before they do even the first step, which is, oh, I want to change the world, but I first need an investor, or I need a co-founder, or I need all those things in place before I can even, like, take the first step. What is your take on things, having been involved in this space, um, and working as a co-founder? Like, what are some of the essential steps that you cannot skip, and what are some of the things that you can sort of say, okay, may not be the right, like, may not be, I may not have all the resources, I may not have investors, I may not have a co-founder, but I can still do a little bit of the journey on my own. According to you, what are those things?
A few things. It's a great question, and it maps very cleanly against our experience together, Pat and me. So for one thing, we definitely promote bootstrapping as a method of entrepreneurialism that keeps things really in the founder's own control as much as possible, and not delaying the actual work of building the product, the service, or whatever it is that you aspire to do that generates value for the customers that you are here to serve, versus spending a lot of time trying to, like, develop your pitch deck and go spend a lot of time with VCs or angels or whatever and try to do fundraising, at least in our space, right, which is predominantly the creator economy, at large, and some ancillary markets. But we advocate as much velocity into those markets as possible, and we do feel that bootstrapping and other methods of some, like, maybe micro fundraising is a better path for the sort of person that we champion and that we have the privilege of serving in our communities. So I guess that's kind of maybe point number one, is like that velocity equation on, like, get into the market as fast as possible with the smallest thing that you can to start getting some reps, right? Start getting some actual feedback from the people that you want to serve, and then iterating as fast as possible. And that kind of lines up with that financial kind of fundraising point, all number one. Number two, I would say, is don't outsource your core competency, right? So if you really do want to serve in a particular way and build up a particular product, be as hands-on, especially early on, as possible before outsourcing. So outsourcing can come later, or building a team and delegating, and Pat was mentioning that a bit in his story as well. And that's really critical at a certain, like, scale point later to enable more growth, right? And to continually think about how you work on the business and expand that value. But from, like, day one, especially if it's just you, or if you do have a co-founder, I try to promote, like, be as hands-on so that, like, you actually feel it and you know what's required to make this thing good. Because then, like, when you know what good looks and feels like in the product or the service that you're building, then you can teach the next person that you want to hand that off to what that looks like, right? So I would say that those are kind of my two kind of guidelines from the get-go.
That's excellent. Yeah, I mean, taking that first step, getting into the market to to get the feel is very important. But I
Mhm.
also feel what ends up happening is, as people go down that path, start adopting this mindset that, only I can do this as good as it can be. And so, even though they may start doing it, it's very hard for them to let go of the control. So Pat, when you met Matt, like, how was that experience for you? Was it hard for you to let go and sort of say, okay, I built this now, I'm here to share the responsibility? How was that experience?
Yeah, it's a very difficult thing, especially as a solo creator who kind of wore all the hats at first, and you feel like nobody else can do it as good as you can, and you also feel like you worry about handing it off because it has to be done a certain way. But what I found is that the opposite is actually true. There's actually people out there like Matt and like a lot of our other team members who do the things that are required in the business that I don't want to do or not and not good at. Um, but they do it faster and better. And so what happens is the time equation comes into play. I'm getting more time back to put into things that I have to do in my business that only I can do. Because the truth is, a lot of us, we do a lot of things in the business on our own, especially while bootstrapping. But we could probably hand off things a lot sooner than we think, because you get time back to put into other things that can help grow the business that you can do. And now you are essentially cloning yourself in a way, or having other people do a lot of that work for you. Now, it's not easy, and I would recommend definitely starting small. When Matt came into play in the mid 2010s, 2014, 2015, or around that time, I had some experience handing some stuff off already. And the first one that was a big one for me was the podcast, actually. As a podcaster, and my name on the podcast, and my style, my voice, my editing, it was all me. It was very difficult for me to let go of that. But I said, you know what? I'm just going to test this out. And that's the way that you go about it. You test it out. You don't have to commit to anything forever when you hand off something. But what I did was I ended up sort of recording how I did what I did and then handing that off to somebody. And then what happens is now they follow that process, and it's going to be like you did it because you showed them how to do it. But it's important to also say, how would you also make this better or more efficient? Because that's what they can fully think about while you're thinking about 100 other things. And what you find happens is they come with their own special sauce to put on top of it to make it even better than you could ever yourself. And so by testing it, you're able to see that. And trust me, when you get a little taste of what it's like to outsource something and have somebody else do the work for you, and then maybe you wake up the next day and it's done, I mean, you start looking for everything to be able to
Yeah,
hand off.
yeah,
That's what I did, and then ended up acquiring Matt's team, and now there's 10 people working with us full time, and it's just a beautiful machine. So that I can now focus on the interviews and the conversations and the relationship building, and the podcasting, which is where I want to be. I still want to be a creator. And you'll see a lot of people who start off as a creator who then turn it into a business, who never get to create again, right? And they're
mm-hmm.
feeling not great because maybe they were a designer, they love designing, and now they have this giant design agency, and they're just people managing the whole time, right? And they're not even
Mm-hmm.
designing anymore. Whereas, Matt really comes in with his superpower, as initially he was more of the integrator, right? I'm the visionary, he's the integrator, able to make things happen. But now Matt is also a visionary, so he's able to bring things to the table and add his own flavor too in that way, which is very special. Not a lot of people are like that, but they do exist. And I think having an online business manager or an integrator to start to help put a lot of those things into place is really important.
Yeah, that's a great point. So just to summarize the insights I got was, handing over the responsibilities easier if you adopt some sort of system, as you said, like you recorded the instructions and handed it over. And
Yeah.
then to further take advantage of the people you're working with, give them the freedom to add their own creativity, because ideas just build upon ideas. And if you give that freedom, it actually gets better, right?
Right. As long as the end result is the same or better, then great. Because very common is to begin to start to micromanage, and you actually
Yeah, yeah,
spend more time managing the people than you would have gotten if you didn't have them at all, right? And
yeah,
and Matt knows a lot about
yeah, yeah.
hiring and outsourcing as well.
Yeah. So this question I'll throw to both of you, and take whoever wants to answer. But creator economy is a new buzzword that a lot of people are talking about. Obviously, it's not a new thing that is happening in the economy, but we are talking a lot about creator economy. So can you help us understand what this creator economy is? And a lot of people, the second part of the question is, why do so many people underestimate, like most, and I went through the same thing, by the way. I didn't know that the knowledge I have is of any use to anybody. I'm like, oh, this is common knowledge. Everybody knows this. Like, why do I even need to talk about it? So
Mhm.
that mental block, I find that to be present in many, many other people who have a lot of value to give. So two parts of the question. What is this creator economy, and how can people participate in just recognizing their knowledge is valuable?
Now, why don't you
Yeah.
take this one first?
Yeah, I'll go first. In terms of like the markets, there's just been a consolidation, and I think it's very useful in terms of the language and vocabulary we use. We want to use shared language, right, with everyone as much as possible. With podcaster and blogger, from its heyday, right, and then like social media person, like the creator economy and creator itself, just the word creator is now kind of the all-in idea, right? It represents all of these different people, whether you have a Substack newsletter or you're a YouTuber and you have a YouTube channel and that's your predominant thing. Creators now kind of this umbrella idea, and it's really useful and nice to be able to like have a defining singular term to be able to communicate, because increasingly it matters less like if you're a YouTuber versus a Substack newsletter writer or a podcaster. You're still probably oriented around the same set of principles, and you're still trying to probably create value and help in a very similar way, right? You're using content either in one dimension or several, different media types to build an audience, to earn that trust and that following, to then ultimately lead them into some sort of an experience where you can maybe help them more, like teach them more or participate with them more in their own journey. And that for us is like where community comes in really big, and maybe we'll come back to that topic. But that's kind of the all-in idea around like where creator fits. And to me, and I'd love Pat to weigh in, like there's a big element of like education and help that's associated with like the idea of being a creator, versus maybe say like the word influencer is still related and is maybe like a Venn diagram kind of like overlaps a little bit. But when I think about influencers, those are people that might be a little more like on the famous or celebrity side, and they do a little more in the entertainment space. It's all very valuable. But on the creator side, we're really trying to teach knowledge and communicate principles and methodologies to help someone accomplish something.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, to me, a creator is a person who steps forward to share something with the idea that it will, in somehow or some way, shape, or form, not just help people and bring a lot of people in and bring followers, but ideally generate some revenue as well for them in some way, shape, or form. So there's many different ways to do that and be a creator. And I think altogether those things create the creator economy, where there's value being exchanged, but money being exchanged between platforms and their creators, but as well as creators and specific products, and creators and their customers or students or what have you. So all those things together, there is a lot of money flowing in the space now, and there's a lot more than ever companies from the outside going, wow, look at that authority or influencer or person who has that YouTube channel. We want to pay them money because they have earned the trust with that audience that they've built, and that is valuable. So then there's money being exchanged. Now, as far as like understanding whether or not you have information or any value to share, I think a big part of that is feeling like you have to be an expert in something in order to provide value. And that's not true. To me, the word expert just means you know a little bit more than somebody else about something, and that can still be of value. In fact, it can be more valuable just being a couple steps ahead of a person, because you have a more relatable experience that is not too far away from you to be able to share and bring people along with the ride, versus the university professor who's been in that space for 50 years, who's trying to teach the same thing. They're a little far removed from it, and that was such a long time ago for them, versus a person who's just, for example, me, having passed a architecture exam, who can now show others how to do it like I just did. It's more relatable. And this is how I was able to compete with companies out there that were teaching the same kind of material that I was, because they were companies without a face, without a personality. Their material was, yes, more expensive, but I was more relatable because I was just like my audience not too long ago. So that's where you can compete. You can compete on experience, you can compete on your story. But in addition to that, your information that you have is valuable to somebody, and you just have to go and attract those people. we often suffer from this thing that Chip and Dan Heath call in their book, I think it was called Made to Stick, this idea of the curse of knowledge. When you know something, it's hard to remember what it's like not to know that thing.
Mm.
Therefore, you don't know how valuable that is. And I even have to be reminded of this of sometimes too, because when we teach something simple like how to, how to build a website, right? Like we've created websites a long time ago. We're far from that beginning stage. But when we bring people into the audience who are attracted to the idea of building a business and generating passive income and such, one of their first steps is, maybe you need to create a website. And so it's important for us to get into their heads and to talk to them, to be able to go back to their level so that we can best serve them, instead of feeling like, oh, well, we've done that already. We're far beyond that. And now we're no longer relatable, and they might move on to somebody else. So
Yeah.
your information is valuable. How do you know? Share every question that comes across with your answer. That's a great way to build authority and to build brand awareness. Even on short form video platforms like TikTok and YouTube and Instagram Reels, you just answer people's questions that are coming in. They might be things that you've known for years, but these people, they're discovering this for the first time, and that is valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are great insights. I recall, and this was so long ago, I may not be even right on this, but I remember, Pat, I came across a blog that you made about food trucks.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
that's right.
So that was an eye-opening thing for me. Like, I enjoy food and I go like enjoy going to food truck, but I never thought that was of an information that was of interest to me, but I really found it very interesting. And that's when I realized, oh, any topic can be of value to people who are looking for that. And there are
Mhm.
so many interests, millions of interests people have. um, so that was great. And now, being a creator myself, one other thing what I found is, consistency is the key as well. Like, a lot of people have talent, a lot of people recognize that they have value, but then they start, they do it for 2 or 3 weeks and they say, oh, nobody showed up, nobody cares, so I'm just
Mhm.
going to stop. In fact, I was reading that, you know about 90% of the podcast, they stop at episode 3, and the rest of those 90%, they stop at episode 20. And even if you just carry across episode 21, you'll be pretty much in the top 1% of the podcasts in the world. So, how do you address, like, what are your opinions about this case of consistency?
Mm. Matt, you'll take first, maybe?
Yeah, happy to. I think it's sort of table stakes, right? Especially now in 2022, and we're almost to 2023. The landscape of the internet is that much larger, like exponentially larger in terms of people online that are helpful and doing good work. But it's a numbers game at some point, right? So like consistency is a quality that will keep you relevant, will keep you sharp. It will continue to hopefully like propagate success, right? In terms of audience building and meeting new people and eventually having them economically like support your small business in the way that's relevant to your business model. So it's table stakes, it's a necessity. And I think that if that ever is like lost, in terms of like kind of falling out of favor or yeah, that it can breed problems. So be consistent.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to keep showing up. That's for sure. How can you build fans if your fans can't rely on you continually coming back? Now, that doesn't mean you have to create a video every single day or create a piece of content every single day, but as so long as you keep going. And, if you say weekly to start out with, which is often recommended, great. I like weekly because you're getting in good reps, but you have time to practice, and you have time in between to take a breather. And if you happen to miss a week, that's fine too. I think just like working out, if you miss one of the days you're supposed to work out, that's fine. Don't make a big deal about it. Just go back the next time you're supposed to and keep going. It's when you drop off the face of the earth and then nobody can find you for a while is when it becomes a problem. And all that effort put up front is now wasted, because the truth is twofold. Number one, it's going to take time to see results. And that's the hard thing with now and today, especially the younger generation who is so used to just getting things quickly. I mean, we could have food delivered in 20 minutes now, or even have batteries delivered to your home when you need it, just like almost instantly now, which is just ridiculous. But we still have to be macro patient with results when it comes to the work that you're doing. It's like, I think Gary Vee called it micro hustle, hustle on the small things that you need to do, but you got to be macro patient with the
Mhm.
results coming in. And then the other part of this is changing your expectation of what success is with this thing, right? So yes, you have to give something enough time to give it a chance. But at the same time, I think too many people expect 4 podcast episodes to go out and all of a sudden you're number one in Apple. And if you're not, it's a failure.
Mhm.
Change that expectation. Expect that you're going to need to stick with it for a certain number of months, and then have a number to look forward to, that if you at 6 months or after a year are experiencing this kind of growth in business, or, first of all, you got to know what your measurement stick is for why you're doing this, right? So if you can reach that goal, great, keep going with it. If not, you can now consciously more easily say, you know what, I'm going to try something else for now. I think it's when we just throw spaghetti on the wall and just see what sticks without any plan or without any measurement, is when it really starts to become an issue, and we start to have that squirrel syndrome where it's like, this the new thing that people are talking about, let's try that for 2 days. Oh, that didn't work, let's try this new thing, hoping that something's going to explode and go viral, because that's what we see in the news and that's what gets presented to us, all these viral things. But what you don't see are the hardworking people who are just consistent and are creating value over and over again. Eventually, always, especially if there's optimization in mind, those people will rise to the top and will succeed. It just takes some time.
Yeah, absolutely. One relevant sort of analogy that comes to mind is Pokemon Go became overnight success, and I think the guy who created it, he said, it took us 20 years to get to the overnight success.
Yep.
Now, you've been in this for a long time, and you have seen so many changes come through. And now, we had medium, like blogs were very popular in 2008. Then social media sort of started taking over. Then it became like microblogging. Twitter became so popular, and
Mm-hmm.
now we are talking about podcast. We are talking about platforms like audio platforms like LinkedIn has released one. I forget the other one, but now there's talk about metaverse. So the medium of creating that content is continuously changing. Do you see, and from your vantage point, what kind of transition have you seen, and where do you see the industry is going eventually? Like, are we going to be all like avatars in the metaverse talking to each other? Like, what do you think?
Well, I mean, if you take a look at Meta stock, you might be able to decipher the direction that it's going. But anyway, maybe not. And honestly, the technology, it doesn't really matter. There are people there, and that's what matters. And if you can be there to solve their problems in whatever platform it is, then you will succeed. I think the technology, we've seen it change and it will continue to change. But what hasn't changed is that people always need help for things. People want to feel like they belong to something. They want to connect. This is why right now in our business, we're really focused on community. That's the sort of the next step of, and the next part of the evolution here is, it was very much, blogs and one-sided conversations. Then it was like these micro conversations that were happening on these public platforms. And then Facebook groups came into play. And that was kind of nice because they were semi-private spaces for people to connect and be a little bit more open with each other. And then courses for education are great. Now we're focusing now and into the future, something called community-powered courses. This is where you're not just getting the information that you need, because information is freely available almost everywhere now, right? Yes, to have it compact in a course with steps and guides, like, cool, that's even better, and there's value there. But the real value now comes from the connection to other people who are going through that journey with you, the connection to the creator who created that course to be able to help you answer questions along the way. So we're really investing into community powered courses where, yes, you can get access to our courses, but with our all access pass, for example, you'll be able to now have access to the community and the people behind it, and to be able to work through that information together, to be able to create groups and have accountability, and to have inspiration from others who just did that lesson you're about to do, to see how awesome it is, so you can be compelled to move forward. Because completion rates for courses, although we have much higher than average in the industry, it's still very low. But when you start to bring a community in, and we tested this through more intense cohort-based courses recently in our boot camps, like the success rate just skyrockets. So our goal is to help people get to within reach of their dreams. And to be able to do that, we want to bring those people together, not just have individual dreams, but people who have the same dreams come together to support each other. And that's where we see things going. And whether that eventually involves us getting into Oculuses so we can see each other's avatars, I'm not sure. I don't think that matters. I think what matters is with the platforms we have available now, like Circle, to bring a private community together, that, and this is the key word, that feels safe for people to open up, to combine ideas, to collaborate, and to converge is really key. So that's where we see things headed. And I don't have a crystal ball, but I think that no matter what, people are going to be a part of it. I think that's obvious. And so just always keep that in mind, no matter what the tech is around that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Matt, do you want to add anything to it?
Yeah, if I could just punctuate it, really, I think Pat's spot on, right? I would even maybe add that the promise and essence of community has maybe always been there, right? Like we have gone online even in the early aughts with one-way blogs when Seth Godin first started his blog, right? As an example, because like we wanted to connect with Seth and we wanted to read his stuff, and maybe I left a comment, right? Super old school like blogger days, right? So it was the idea of community, I actually believe was always there. And then the technologies kept getting better in the way that Pat was describing, from like one permutation of the internet to the next. And we kept getting closer and closer together towards this ideal, this aspiration of community online, right? And now today, as we sit here, we're as close as we've ever been because of platforms like Circle. And that's what we're increasingly building our business on. And we're pivoting very strategically and intentionally more so into that direction. When we first launched SPIPro.com, which is our flagship community, in the summer of 2020, we were working on it actually even before the pandemic hit. This was our first kind of main new product. We think of community as a product, right? The product of the company. And we launched that, and we exceeded our goals. We had like a 500 member cap as our goal when we first launched, and we've been growing since then. So like, we always want to get closer to this essence of bringing people together, having them meet each other, and then education, as Pat was describing, by way of like the new all access pass that's launching, just continually enriches that ecosystem and allows us to really help people on that pathway from, potentially like early stage entrepreneur all the way to, if this is in fact their goal, to being like full-time independent, financially independent on their own, working on their own terms with their own small business.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, community is so important. Like, just as a species, we are so much of a social species that we need that connection and support. And that's one thing, I would like you to dig a little bit deeper into this. Like a lot of influencers or creators, I feel like not that they don't know how to build the community, but sometimes they are too much focused on what they know, their language, their the technical language they use, and they are not able to like really tune into what the community wants. What is your secret of actually building such a large community? Because I think that was a huge how can I say, like a impetus for your growth earlier on, because you actually created humongous community around you. So how can you share that pixie dust of building that community for creators who are in the game but they are not able to build that community yet?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that difficult. I think again, it just comes down to people and creating and facilitating a space and conversation for those people to relate to and to come together with. For me, one of the biggest things that I think I did was I really started to feature a lot of success stories from people in the community. And that to me, and I talk about this in my book, Superfans, works better than anything, because people on the outside of the community start to see that it's not just me talking about me the whole time. It's not even me talking about others. It's inviting them into the space to make them the hero of the story. This is very much Donald Miller in his book, Telling a Story Brand. This is exactly what they teach. You make your audience the hero of the story. You're not the hero. You're the guide. And the most powerful people in movies are not necessarily the hero that we all follow, but the guides that help them, right? Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda or Gandalf, right? These are the people who are very powerful and who everybody wants to go to because they've helped these people go from nothing to something. And when you share that transformational story and people see themselves in that story, they now want to also go to the same guides who help them, right? It paints a picture of their future without just the creator or person selling the thing saying it, which it's just so much more powerful that way. So that was really key for me in the growth. It was a lot of that. It was also being a lot of very just understanding the language that the audience would respond to, right? And very quickly, I started to realize why I stood out amongst the sea of other people in the space that I was in. I mean, online business was very saturated, early on, but I still came in late. But I think that was an advantage because I could see here is what people didn't like about the space, and here's what people wish they had available to them. So I stepped up and created that. And what I mean by that specifically was I created a place where it was always just authentic and nothing was hidden. I created a space where I wasn't doing this for the Lamborghinis and the mansions and all these other things that you see in all these other people selling courses and products and such, Lamborghinis and garages and all that kind of stuff. This was specifically, why are you doing this, Pat? Because I just want to spend more time with my family, because I want to walk with my kids every day to school and be able to pick them up. And that kind of messaging and story resonates with a certain kind of person who wants to follow this kind of stuff. And, back in the day, online business was for the sort of nerds and the people who just didn't really even have families and such. But then as the online space started to get more crowded, people started to want to do something similar, but weren't really attracted to those kinds of people anymore and didn't want Lamborghinis, but they wanted, just like me, to spend more time with family and to just have a secure financial future and to have more time to play. And that's exactly the kind of stories that we tell, not just my own, but the stories of my audience as well.
Yeah. And I'll just, I just want to make a comment here that I think a lot of people I talk to who have achieved success, they have this optimism. As Pat, you just said that the space was crowded, but rather than complaining about it, you said, it was good for me. It gives you data. It gives you the data, and I find that that optimism is common between a lot of people who actually make it. So I just wanted to point that out. Matt, do you want to add anything to this?
Just another probably punctuation, right? I have two small kids, a baby, 8 months, and a toddler who is increasingly rambunctious. And like Pat, like I'm motivated to spend more time with them and be dad and be a great husband and participate in my like local communities here, right? So, I think we're all as entrepreneurs galvanized to create something larger than ourselves, but not in at least for I guess the spirit of SPI and how we do things, not for vanity-based reasons, right? We want to create something larger than ourselves for the people we're serving, for our team, and be able to like have really awesome jobs as like being a job creator and being able to then, train and advance the people that, we have the pleasure to work with, on our team. So those are our motivating forces. And I think that when you can really kind of channel that into your business model and the products that you make, I think that is a not only winning recipe for success now, but I think that is timeless. I think will continue to work.
Matt, are we hearing your kids in the background?
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's
I had to come off of mute.
You couldn't time
I know.
Any better.
I know.
That was so good.
The toddler just got home. I'm so sorry.
No, it's all good. Perfect. I think we are all used to that. Those background noises.
It's relatable.
Noises yeah. One last question is like, this will be for both of you. What is one important mistake or lesson you have learned through this journey?
Oh, yeah. I'll go first. Okay. Indecisiveness. Like there's so much that, when you're a solopreneur, or even when you maybe get to a point where you have a co-founder or you have a small team, like being indecisive is one of like the trickiest things to contend with, because the internet especially moves so fast. There's new opportunities. So when you know something is right, and sometimes that means making hard decisions also, like make the decision.
For me, it would be there is no room for perfectionism. It kind of goes along with what Matt said, because it will keep you indecisive. It'll keep you from publishing. And I think there's so much more value in publishing and putting something out there that's not perfect and learning from that than waiting until something is perfect and then potentially seeing that that's not actually what the audience wanted. And so I've had to really get over that, because I grew up being a perfectionist, and you cannot succeed as an entrepreneur and be a perfectionist. I mean, there is something to be said for wanting to make things great and having good quality stuff. But if you're not publishing anything because you're too worried about that, then you're helping nobody.
Absolutely. Great. Well, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your journey, sharing your wisdom. Now, before I let you go, can you tell us how people can reach out to you, how they can join your programs?
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much. I'll say a couple of resources, and Matt, maybe you want to add up another punctuation on top of that. First of all, smartpassiveincome.com is our website, but we're really, really wanting to focus on the growth of our community right now and to serve entrepreneurs in that way. So if you go to smartpassiveincome.com/community, you'll see a couple different offerings. Those for the beginners in the audience, there's something for you there as well as we have what we call SPI Pro. That was actually our first community of experienced entrepreneurs, and we do a lot more heavy lifting and programming specifically for existing entrepreneurs there. So smartpassiveincome.com/community, and then of course our podcast as well, the Smart Passive Income podcast. Matt.
Yeah, in addition to that, community is our focal point. If you want to learn more specifically about our pro community, we also have smartpassiveincome.com/pro, or you can get there also just by going to spipro.com. But don't forget to join our email list as well. Pat has a brand new Unstuck newsletter that's been out for a few months, and it's just going gangbusters. People love it. So if you go to just any smartpassiveincome.com landing page, including the homepage, you'll see an invitation to sign up. It's email, it's free, and Pat's newsletter is awesome.
Awesome. We'll put those links in the show notes. Thank you so much. Thank you.
This was such a pleasure. Yeah, so much fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.